Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. While learning to drive, you might have had confusions about when to apply and release the clutch. Now, you might be clear on that, but do you know why it is so important to have a clutch? Well, you'll get to know the reason today. In this video, we will discuss what a clutch is, why it is necessary, how a single plate clutch works, and some of its advantages and disadvantages. So let's get started. A clutch is a mechanical device located between the engine and the transmission system for the purpose of disconnecting or reconnecting the engine with the gearbox. You may have a question now, why do we want to disconnect the clutch and reconnect it again? While starting the vehicle, the engine should run at a reasonable speed to develop sufficient torque to move the vehicle. If the engine is connected with the transmission at this time, it results in a huge load and would make the engine stall. Therefore, the engine should be disconnected from the transmission system while starting, and then it has to be engaged smoothly. On the other hand, clutch also plays a vital role while changing gears and during emergency stopping. In simple words, the clutch ensures the running of the engine in all these conditions by disengaging and transmits motion whenever necessary by engaging the engine with the transmission system. Now let's move on to see the most common and widely used type of clutch, the single plate clutch. A single plate clutch is a type of friction clutch. That is, these clutches work on the principle of friction. Assume there are two shafts, A and B, held at the same axis. Let C and D be the circular discs attached to the end of the shafts respectively. When an axial force is applied to one shaft, it presses against the other one. Now, if any one of the shafts rotate, the friction exerted between the plates make the other shaft rotate as well. This ensures the motion gets transmitted from one shaft to the other. Friction clutches work in a similar way. When it comes to construction, a single plate clutch consists of a clutch plate, a pressure springs, a housing, and a lever mechanism. The flywheel, which is connected to the engine crankshaft, acts as the foundation on which the clutch assembly is mounted. Holes are drilled in the flywheel for connecting the clutch cover with bolts. It also has a bearing in its center which acts as end support for the clutch shaft. The clutch plate is a circular plate made up of a central hub and an outer disc. The central hub is provided with splines which mesh with the splines of the input shaft. Thus, the clutch plate can move axially over the input shaft. The outer disc is made of thin steel and both sides of the disc are lined with friction material like asbestos. The outer edges of the discs are often split for flexibility and there are torsion springs in between the disc and hub. These springs act as dampeners for preventing torsional vibrations. Then comes the pressure plate. It is made up of cast iron and has the same diameter as the clutch plate. One side of the pressure plate is smooth and it faces the clutch disc. The other side accommodates the springs and the clutch release mechanism. Then we have the housing. In the housing, there are a number of coil springs or a diaphragm spring. These springs press the pressure plate against the clutch plate. There is a release lever which is used for drawing the pressure plate away from the clutch plate. The housing is made of cast iron or aluminum and is provided with openings for heat dissipation. At last, there's a clutch operating lever mechanism. The mechanism consists of a throwout or release bearing that can be moved front and back by the release fork. The release fork is operated by the clutch pedal. Here, the flywheel, pressure plate, cover, and springs with release levers rotate all the time when the engine is running. These are the driving members, whereas the clutch plate and the clutch shaft rotates only when the clutch is engaged. That is, they serve as the driven members. Now, let's see how the clutch works. In normal circumstances, the pressure plate presses against the clutch plate by the action of pressure springs and the motion gets transmitted to the output shaft. But when the clutch pedal is depressed, the release fork moves the throwout bearing against the release lever. This, in turn, makes the pressure plate move away from the clutch plate. Thus, the clutch is in a disengaged position now. When the pedal is released, the pressure plate goes back to its position because of the pressure springs. This is how a single plate clutch works. The single plate clutch is compact, reliable, and cheap. But the force required to disengage the clutch is more when compared with the other clutches. The number of friction surfaces in the clutch can be increased by increasing the number of clutch plates. This ensures high torque transmission, and those types of clutches are called multi-plate clutches. They are preferred in large trucks and racing cars. So that's it for this video, guys. We'll discuss the other types of clutches in the upcoming videos. Until then, bye.